Hi, students. Welcome back. I am really looking forward to this next guest because I think you all are going to love him and love connecting and learning about him, and you're really going to like his interesting fact. I'm prepping him for telling you his fun life because I'm a little envious of the things that he's done. But Tyler Mosmeyer is with us. He works at Vail Resorts, so already maybe that has piqued your interest because that seems like such a fun place to work. He's going to tell us about it. He is going to talk to us mainly about IT audit. So Tyler, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to you and have you tell the students a little bit more about you, your education, career background, and then that one fun fact. I know you probably have more than one, but one you can share with the students.
No, happy to connect with everyone today. And yeah, I'm Tyler Mosmeyer. As Joe mentioned, I'm a director at Vail Resorts within the internal audit team. And yeah, I'll kind of kick it off by telling a little bit about my background, education, career path. So yeah, I have an undergraduate degree or a bachelor's in business administration in finance, and graduated from the University of Oklahoma. And after that, started working with an international management consulting firm. The name of the firm's Protiviti. And yeah, it was a fairly recently formed firm after kind of a spinoff of another accounting firm in the early 2000s, and started my career there. It really provided a lot of really interesting opportunities to travel, to learn about different industries, different companies, unique business problems that the team that I was a part of, was assigned to understand and make recommendations on improving. And working for a bigger firm, it really gives you a lot of opportunities to experience different things. You're not necessarily pigeonholed in one area. And, I've made it a point early in my career to really keep myself open to those opportunities and be willing to travel, sometimes to really interesting and fun places and other times not so much. But that's what made it really, really fun and engaging. So spent a number of years there, and then found an opportunity with a small consulting firm in Denver. So I originally started my career in Dallas, moved to Denver with this small firm, and did a lot of similar work. The market was obviously different, and there was a lot more focus on building relationships with the clients, driving more business development activities, which was a new thing for me, and definitely a stretch. And that opportunity also provided some fun opportunities, and whether it was traveling across the US or Canada, or some opportunities to work for clients in Europe. And I also had an opportunity to work for a company who had operations in West Africa, and so was over there for a period of time. So again, like a lot of diversity in industry, whether it be manufacturing or energy or distribution, technology, healthcare, really, ran the gamut in terms of what I was able to experience. So really fun on that front. And yeah, being young and like open to travel experiences, that part was really interesting and something that I enjoyed doing. As far as where how I got from that place to where I am now, I found an opportunity to go work for an energy company that was going through pretty significant growth and was looking to go public, and decided to go and take a risk for a brief period of time. Did an 18-month stint at this company and really helped stand up their internal controls function. And through that experience, really helped build out my understanding of IT risk as it relates to internal controls over financial reporting, or Sarbanes-Oxley. In my prior experience, I had a lot of systems experience kind of at a higher level, really as a way to understand business process and process engineering and how systems overlay that. But as far as maybe my more formative experience in internal controls, that really kind of happened later in my consulting career. And then as I took on this new opportunity at an energy company. And so at that company, I was really, again, tasked with helping build out the control structure for the company and putting them in a good position to go public with a midstream energy function. And so it was a really interesting time, fun to be a part of that, that experience. When a company goes public, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. Maybe a lot of stress as well, but it is very exciting because everyone's on the same page and working towards the same goal. And so after that period, I decided that I wanted to align some passions that I had outside of work with my career path, my professional path. And I found an opportunity to go work for Vail Resorts, and I started off as a manager of their IT audit function. With that said, I still did and oversaw a number of operational projects. And I've now been at the company for 8 years, and that position's evolved into a director position and leading a team over IT audit work, but also over general business process work as well. Everything from things in health and safety or environmental compliance to some accounting and finance work on occasion. Another part of the team handles the majority of that, but I do dabble in that, and my degree in finance does still apply and come in handy from time to time. So about half of the work that I oversee is related to IT risks, information security and data privacy risks, and the other half is focused on operational areas of the business. And fortunately, Vail is a company that operates in a lot of different industries: food and beverage, retail, hospitality, mountain operations, which is probably the area people think of the most when they think of the company. But we have a lot of different businesses that we operate. And so as an internal auditor, that makes the types of projects that we can do very interesting and diverse. And we typically aren't doing the same projects year in and year out, given how broad the scope of our business is. So that makes it really fun and engaging. And, maybe to round it out, and I kind of hit on it earlier as far as tying passion to my career path, and that I am very passionate skier, do a lot of that during the winter, also do a good amount of backcountry skiing and ski mountaineering. And I've really been able to fortunately tie that into the work that I do. And over the past 10 years, I set out with a good friend of mine to ski all of the continents, which, you might be scratching your head like, is that possible? Is there snow on all the continents? And yes, in fact, yeah, there are beautiful mountain ranges across the world, across all continents, and was lucky enough to be able to wrap that goal up last fall with a trip to Antarctica and doing some ski touring there. So fortunate enough to, again, be able to pursue that passion outside of work and also contribute in a way to providing that experience for guests who come visit our resorts.
Yeah. Okay, students. So I'm hoping you get now why I said Tyler's pretty fun. I don't think you will meet very many people that have skied on every continent. So now we can all say that we've met somebody that has. So thank you for sharing all that, Tyler. And I do want to just point out how important I think it is to match your passion and your personal values with where you go to work. And I think that's something, even right out of school, we just are so anxious to get a job that maybe we put that aside. And so, obviously Tyler came around to that a little bit later on, but I always try to tell my students early on, you interview those companies just as much as they're interviewing you. And I think that's really, really important. That's a lesson I learned later on too, that I like to pass on a little bit earlier. So I love that your passion matches your work today. You mentioned that you do a lot of both, really, IT audit and operational audit. And I kind of wanted to start out this conversation with, the more I got into internal audit, the more I realized how integrated it was, or it really needed to be. I always thought of myself as a FinOp, a financial operational auditor. But the more I grew, the more I realized I needed to know about IT. So can you just tell us really, what do you see as the difference? How are they integrated at Vail Resorts? What does that look like in your career path?
Yeah. I mean, great point, Joe. And I think somewhat earlier in my career, made the statement that like there are no such thing as IT risks. And I think really what that person meant by that was that IT risks are really just a subset of business risks. You know, if you think of all of the risks that a business could face, that is inclusive of IT. And I think that's a really healthy way to look at it, because without a direct connection back to the broader business and objectives the business is trying to achieve, goals they're trying to achieve, sometimes there can be a disconnect between why a IT risk is relevant to the broader business. And so I think it's just important, whether you're talking about environmental risks or financial risks or IT risks, just to be able to always connect them back to, well, what does this mean for the business? And that's how I like to view IT, and that in some ways, many of the risks that now are manifested through IT systems, or people, they come to bear through interactions with technology. Those risks existed before technology maybe was leveraged. Just think about securely storing information. That could be information in hard copy, and prior to that maybe being stored digitally. How was a company making sure that that information was secure, that only the right people had access to it, so on and so forth. So while you can't apply maybe every concept in IT, or take every concept in IT risk management back to what it was before technology, there are some direct connections, and it's just a maybe important thing to get across there. And really, the other part of your question, as far as how they're integrated, I think like you'd be hard pressed nowadays to find a company that doesn't heavily rely on IT systems to perform critical business functions. And whether that's a system that is used internally, like where maybe the outside world doesn't see it and just the company uses it to maybe just manage their financials or staffing or payroll or something, to systems that might be externally facing, that a website that a customer can go to and buy goods or services. There's really, technology is ubiquitous now. And again, companies that are able to deliver value to their shareholders, deliver value to ownership, are typically looking for ways to leverage technology to become more efficient, more effective, have a broader reach. And so the key, I think, from an IT audit standpoint, again, is really understanding what the core business objectives are, and then how are systems layered on to those processes to, again, enable that efficiency. And then as a result, what risks does the company face in trying to manage these systems from a confidentiality, availability, and like data integrity standpoint. And so I think that nowadays we're really seeing, I think auditors that the best positioned auditors are those that aren't willing, or not, I shouldn't say aren't willing, but are interested in maybe pursuing a hybrid path. And it doesn't mean you always have to be 50-50 in terms of, I want to do IT and business process in a balanced way. But if you stay open, say you're a deeply skilled IT auditor, or that's the direction you want to go, I think that you can become an even better IT auditor if you have good experience doing business process or operational work. Because again, you can't really have blinders on and just view things purely from a business process standpoint or purely from an IT standpoint. It's very much connected, and it's important to recognize that as you move forward.
Yeah, as you're talking, a couple things are coming to my mind, but it's almost like you can't do any job in a vacuum, right? And even the best, I think, IT personnel at a company, whatever you want to call them, systems people, are the best ones of those that I've encountered know the business that's on their systems. And I think that goes hand in hand with auditors, right? I mean, you can't just know the system or, the coding or, without knowing what the system's doing. And I think, that's what sometimes gets companies in trouble, or when we're so siloed and so departmental that we end up not working together when we are going towards the same business objectives, right?
Exactly.
So what you're saying is definitely resonating to me with almost any job, even when it comes to being an accountant. or a CFO and working in that group, it's better. You've got to know your business lines, right? And what those dollars represent and where it's coming from. Maybe you can get away for a while without knowing that, but once when you're moving up, or if you want to move up, I think knowing the business and understanding that is so important. So I love the synergies. I feel like that operational and IT auditors have gained over, I'd say, the last 20 years we've been doing this. So so what are the types of, if you were going to do a strictly IT audit, what would that look like? And maybe explain how you might bring operational auditors in on that, and I think, to me, I'll give you a quick example. I'm thinking about how when I was a director of audit, we started building in some IT tests within our operational audit, like user access. We would always used to rely on our IT auditors to do, user access audits, who has access to the systems, what roles. But we realized the operational auditors and the business people know more than anybody who should have access to what roles, right? And the IT people are really just the ones doing that, setting that access. So we really started, that's my example of probably integrating, what IT used to do and operational does. So how does that look? Yeah. Give us an example for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think a pretty good example that I've consistently seen over my career that really almost forces the issue in terms of getting IT involved, or an IT audit mindset involved in maybe what people would view as strictly business process or finance and accounting area, is a lot of the fraud cases that have come across my desk during my career, where it starts out as financial or accounting kind of research, like, let's understand these transactions, what's going on here, whether it's a customer or whether it's an internal transaction, like a journal entry or something. But maybe it's starting out as investigating that, and then it soon transitions to questions around, well, how were they able to actually do this? Like, what access do they have that allowed them to make these entries, or perform these financial transactions, authorize them, whatnot. And that's really when it starts, again, turning to, well, this process is enabled by technology, so now we need to understand, okay, what are the groups within this system? What are the access groups? Who are members of those? What are the permissions that each of those roles has? What is an employee's role within the company, and is that appropriate? So I think there's been, like, pretty consistently over my time, there's been some clear connections there, and like pretty quick connections on, let's do a little bit of investigation on potential financial fraud, and then quickly let's turn to some IT questions, IT system related questions. So that's, I think, a clear example on how quickly it can move from business process to IT and how connected they are. And then maybe from more of a pure IT standpoint, examples of projects that companies perform nowadays. I mean, there's a lot of emerging, the fun thing about IT audit is that it's typically at the top of many companies' lists in terms of risks. Like, information security and data privacy is pretty much a top risk, if not the top, definitely like a top 5 risk for almost every company, because the landscape is changing rapidly. There's new regulations around data privacy. We as a company, but also many other companies, in order to process credit card transactions, like if you're selling something and people are paying for that with the use of a credit card, you oftentimes, depending on how big you are, you need to be compliant with certain regulations that allow you to process credit card transactions. And so there's a payment card industry, or PCI compliance, that companies need to abide by. So, I mean, outside of all of the compliance and regulatory stuff, there's also just pure good practice. And whether that's, let's say, IT incident response, where it's really understanding, in the event of a security incident, how does a company respond effectively if, let's say, their system gets held for ransom, like a ransomware event occurs, which really is somebody coming in from the outside, possibly internally too, but typically coming in from the outside, locking up companies' data or systems and holding it for ransom and saying, hey, we're not going to give you this. You're not going to have access to this unless you pay us a ransom. So that's a increasingly common situation for many companies to face. And that's a flavor of what an IT incident response program has to address. And so that's a good example of maybe a more of an emerging risk area and the value that internal audit can bring to the table, and maybe having a walkthrough of that plan and understanding how well positioned IT and the business are to respond. So you almost just do like a dress rehearsal. Say, all right, and you have a scenario, you have a script, and walk through that with them. And it really helps trigger really good discussion and questions around, gosh, okay, well, this new piece of information got introduced in the scenario. How are we going to respond? How, who do we need to include in this? So that's a good example of something that I think is top of mind for a lot of companies, and also as basic as backing up your data. So a number of years ago, did a project around that, and we wanted to understand, okay, based on system tier, what is the structure of our backup and restore capabilities? If a system goes down and you forget to back up your data, it can be a really big issue for a company to work through. How much time and effort, think about how much time and effort it might take to recreate that information, or think about how much of an impact that could have on a company's ability to close the books, report out on their financials on a quarterly, or annual basis. It could be really hard, right? If all of a sudden you're missing a couple of weeks, even just a couple of days of transactions. And so it's really important for companies to be focused on how often are we backing up that data, and then how capable are we of restoring that data in the event that that data is lost, deleted, compromised in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our other guest speakers talked about how IT is really the nervous system of an organization. I think that was the analogy. I don't remember, it was either backbone or nervous system, but literally, it's supporting every business today when you think about it. So even when you were talking about, disaster recovery, business continuity, all of that, yes, it is another joint, probably integrated effort with business areas and IT, but IT is, has to be working first. That's kind of what has to be there for the companies to run. So I'm trying to think of it as in terms of the human body here, what keeps us going, but yep. IT is so critical today, which is why a lot of IT auditors are getting this certification. I was going to say new, but it's not new. The CISA. So the Certified Information Systems Auditor. So tell us how you feel like that has benefited your career. Is that something you would expect your IT auditors to have? Just tell us a little bit more about that certification.
Yeah, I think it's a really important certification to get. Obviously, in its name, Certified Information Systems Auditor, it's really focused on approaching audit from an information systems standpoint. There's a lot of fundamentals that apply across audit, regardless of IT or non, that it focuses on. But I'm not sure if the exam has changed necessarily from when I took it a number of years ago. But when I took it, there's plenty of study materials that are available. I was very big on getting paper copy versions, maybe not as environmentally friendly, but for me, the tangible copy was really helpful in reading and highlighting and taking notes. And then I also supplemented that with an online component, which was a question bank. And so, over a number of months, I studied for it. And if I recall correctly, I think it's just one exam. I don't think it's multiple exams.
I think so too.
So it's all about putting the time and energy into preparing yourself for it, taking a lot of practice tests. The great thing about it is, they've kind of demystified what is going to be included in the exam, because there's so many study materials, so many questions out there. So really, you have the keys to success. It's just about, are you disciplined enough to carve out the time, and maybe on a weekend, instead of going out with friends, you decide to go to the library or, home
Instead of
office or
skiing, you mean? Instead of skiing one weekend?
yeah, there were many Saturdays and Sundays I opted for that. Or, combine it, and have that be the reward. If you get through a section, okay, then you can go and get some turns in on the weekend. But I also have a CIA certification, certified internal auditor certification, and a project management professional certification. And I think that the one that I probably get the questions about the most is the CISA or the CISA certification focused on information systems. And I think that is maybe one that I've kind of viewed as maybe setting me apart in a way. I think that even as a IT auditor, if you want to go that route, still look at other certifications. Like getting a CIA certified internal auditor certification is really important and it's very foundational. So there's not, I think they're complementary. I don't think they're redundant in any way. So, and there's a whole other, there's a long list, and also in the IT space, a growing list of data privacy, payment card industry, all there's dozens. And so, and they're continuing to change and they're adding them on as things get more complicated. So highly recommend pursuing a certification in addition to, an undergraduate or graduate degree, because it's really a really good resume boost. And again, demonstrates that you're willing to put the time and energy into developing a foundational understanding of a particular subject matter.
Yeah, I love that. That's perfect advice, I think, for the students. And my last question really was, what advice do you have for these students? Maybe you would have told your younger self. I think, it's not about the letters, right? It's not about the alphabet soup, we always call it, behind our names. It really is exactly what you said. It's about showing your interest in a topic and that you want to further your learning and your expertise in that and be able to share that with others. That's what I think of as the true reason why we should be doing certifications. But what other advice would you give students today that are maybe already in the professional world or embarking maybe into a new profession? It could be personal, professional, whatever you can think of.
Yeah, maybe two things. One is, I think, being willing to raise your hand, being open to new opportunities and experiences is a really important skill to develop. And whether it's a lived experience that I have or something that I've observed throughout my career, I think I've seen those that raise their hand first, take a risk, put themselves out there, get rewarded for it, and in a number of ways. And that could be additional opportunities. It could be exposure to higher level leaders or stakeholders within an organization. It could be moving into a new area of a business, like an emerging area, growth area of a business. But I think it's, just be willing to put yourself out there, maybe get outside of your own head and take a risk, and know that many people, if not all people, maybe have some hesitations when it comes to that, but it's all about how skilled you can get at overcoming that initial hesitation. And so, it's just a classic kind of example of like, the more work you're willing to put into it, like the more you're going to get out of those experiences. And also, you may not, you may be really happy with where that leads, and it might be someplace unexpected. And then I think another key component, and I think this is important, I would assume across all areas of business, I think definitely in audit, given our role within an organization, in that our job is literally to interact with other areas of the business that we aren't experts in. And I think that realization or understanding is super important. And the underlying lesson is communication is really everything. And your ability to communicate effectively, both written and verbally, is something that will last, beyond your professional career. And I think it's something that is so fundamental. And again, back to lived experience and stuff I've observed in others, those that are successful are typically really, really good communicators. And so spend time, like being a good communicator takes time. It's something I'm still learning about, and I don't think I'll ever stop learning. And so think about the effort and time you need to put into that. And I think a key part of that is being open to feedback, and whether that's asking somebody how a meeting went that just wrapped up, whether it's reaching out to that stakeholder that maybe you had you kind of butted heads potentially, maybe, weeks or days ago, and asking, hey, like, I just want to know maybe where things went wrong, like open to feedback. Those are great tools to understanding how you can maybe approach a situation differently going forward.
I love both of those things. And I always like to go, okay, here's what I'm hearing in that. And a lot of it is about being uncomfortable, whether it is, being willing to raise your hand and maybe, say, I'll do that project, even though you're a little uncomfortable about it. That might get you pretty far. And I know from firsthand too, that has probably led to some of my changes in my careers. And being uncomfortable, getting that feedback about communication. I think the students have heard a lot that how important that is, but I love your spin on that, in that it's maybe not enough just to practice. Getting that feedback on it is crucial. And I think that's so important. So I think that's a great place to end for the students. On their next presentation, I'm going to challenge them to get feedback from one of their peers, maybe. So thank you so much, Tyler, for being with us. Really appreciate your time and energy and expertise sharing with the students.
Of course. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Joe.